Welcome back to my channel. I have another one-of-a-kind fixed blade that I'm going to be showing you. This is a first impressions slash testing video of the Fallkniven S1x. You can find these in a few different places. Blade HQ has them for $240. They're kind of a pricey knife, but for a completely good reason. They have this pretty much exact version of knife in 3 different sizes. They call it the X series basically. We have the A1X, we have the S1X, which is this here, and then we also have the F1X. The A1X being the largest, the F1X being the smallest, and this here is the medium of the 3 sizes. I honestly could not have chosen a more perfect spot to film this video out here near St. George, Utah, at this campground called Oak Grove Campground. Alright, so here we're going to talk a little bit about the sheath that it comes with. I don't know what to call this material exactly. Basically it's just plastic, and it's not a terrible sheath. It's functional enough, but it has this little lock on it. If it has this switch down, the blade will not come out, so you have to lift the switch, and then there's still a little bit of tension working against the blade. And then the blade is just slightly over 5 inches long, and then it is laminated COS steel, which is a new steel to me. This is my first time hearing about it, but from my understanding it's a pretty good steel, especially for this knife, and Fallkniven does a great job at heat treating it from my understanding, and we're gonna find out if that's true. Yeah, drop point with the satin finish. We have the convex grind, which is absolutely essential in my opinion, especially for a bushcraft knife. Handles are thermal run. Basically, at first glance I thought they were plastic, but later discovered they're basically more rubbery, and I don't mind them at all. The blade style is basically a drop point. Locks into place nicely. Does have a little bit of wiggle when it's in the sheath, which apparently is due to cold temperatures. It's supposed to be suited for cold temperatures, like when it's colder the sheath contracts and it makes it more solid or something like that. But here, this is the Bark River ultralight field knife sheath that it actually just fits in there almost perfectly, and honestly I prefer this leather sheath over it, so I've been carrying it with the leather sheath with the ulti clip. Can you blame me though? Here we're going to test some chopping capabilities of this knife, and right off the bat I can say that this thing chops pretty freaking well. But the first thing I did notice, and I heard from many other people who have experienced chopping with this knife, that the handle is just slightly too thin. Now you can still use it, it's still usable, it's not a complete deal breaker or anything, and if worse comes to worse, I could just make my own spacers, handle spacers, to make it a little bit wider, or maybe even make my own scales if I really want to spend the time to do that. But yeah, the chopping is quite amazing. I think the weight of the blade definitely helps, and you can see like the blade stock is pretty beefy on this thing. Like it's exactly a 1/4 inch thick, so that right there tells you that this knife is pretty much just made to beat on. But yeah, fairly surprised with how quick it ate through that log. On a scale of 1 to 10, I think I would give the chopping ability so far probably a 7 to 7.5. But here I'm going to do a little bit more chopping. I'm going to try chopping some of these branches here, and that is right after I cut some of this grass, which, if you're wondering, it cuts through the grass so well. Like material like that, it does so well. Like I'd say 10 out of 10. And then here I'm chopping a few branches, and once again highly impressed with the performance here. These are some pretty thick branches, and it just goes right through them, like with just a couple whacks, and I was very surprised. Or a couple chops, I could say. And then here's a much bigger branch. It takes several chops, but still eats through it like no problem. Bam. So far truly impressed with this thing, and no noticeable blade or edge damage whatsoever. Alright, here we're gonna see how well it does feather sticking, and it does pretty well. And disclaimer, I am not the best with the feather sticking technique. Like, my technique needs some work, I'll be the first one to admit, but I did manage to get some pretty usable feather sticks going. And the convex grind definitely helps with this. I think this is one of those things where the convex grind is superior to a flat grind. Yeah, on this log, it's a different type of wood. I was able to get some more fine curls, as you can see here. So here's my little bit of fire kindling I got here with some smaller sticks right next to it. I'm about to test out the fire steel capabilities, and right off the bat, I heard from other people who have experience with this knife that the spine on this blade was just not quite sharp enough to use with the fire steel, and also the fire steel I tried very first was basically toast. So I wasn't able to get really any sparks, but later on I did come back and with a new fire steel, and I do show that at the very end. But here, testing out the batoning capabilities, and honestly, this thing does so well with the batoning. I think the convex edge is so helpful for things like this also. See these two pieces of wood, just, I don't have the best baton also, by the way. It's just some random piece of wood. I think I should make my own makeshift baton, but... And then on this piece of wood I tried to baton is literally just a whole bunch of knots, so I was not able to get through this piece. Which is no surprise. I'd be surprised if any knife could get through this thing. It was so tough, and it had like 3 knots on both ends. Kind of ridiculous. Cutting through some cardboard. Didn't do exceptionally well for this, but still cut through it fairly smoothly. So here I am again with the fire steel. I got a new fire steel, and I came back and I tried to make a fire with this thing, and what I heard basically was correct about this knife. The blade stock is just slightly too rounded over. Now, as you can see, I was able to get some sparks, but it is pretty difficult to control exactly where the sparks land. Also, it was a little breezy when I was trying this. That might have contributed. But yeah, not the best with the fire steel, so I would give it like a 4 out of 10. Alright, here I'm basically just plunging the knife as hard as I can into a stump and seeing if I can bend the tip. Definitely a little scary trying this, but I was slightly confident. But I was pretty confident considering how well you can see that the tip is reinforced, and as you can see, absolutely no damage whatsoever. Alright, so we made it back home, and now we're gonna see how the edge retention held up. No visible damage whatsoever, no chipping, no blade rolling, no edge rolling. Definitely got a little bit of scrapes on the blade stock though from the fire steel. As you can see, we can still cut paper, though it's not quite as smooth as it was before. I did test it out beforehand. And as you can see, yeah, I got a couple rips here. But yeah, still able to cut some paper, which I was still pretty impressed with. And this is notebook paper, so this is a little bit thinner than just your traditional printer paper. So yeah, after heavily using this knife, I decided that the handle was just slightly too narrow, too thin. So I was able to find some handle liners on Etsy, some blue ones. They did turn out to be slightly bit more thin than I was expecting. When holding together, they make up about like a 1/16 of an inch. But after I put them on, they did make a little bit of a noticeable difference. And I think I like the look of the knife overall better with the liners. The blue is a nice touch, and yeah, definitely a bit of a noticeable difference. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my future knife review content, and peace.